Alrighty, looks like we're live. Happy Sunday, everybody. Time to do a little bit of a railside chat. You will have to excuse me, still getting over this cold, and the cough that has come along with it is just absolutely something else. So if I break out into a bit of a cough, I will do my best to get my mic muted as fast as I can, but it does kind of come on and get me pretty fast. So anyway, we got lots to talk about this week and some stuff to go over when it comes to the new layout and the progress that I have made on that. So I stated a couple weeks back that I am interested in putting together a new layout, and I started designing one mainly for the purpose of doing reviews and testing some more delicate locomotives. Now, the layout that I currently have, and excuse the background, it's a little bit dimly lit, but it is the evening here, so we're trying to maintain the mood lighting. But I built this as kind of a layout that I wanted, something that filled some of the niches that I was into. Like I love locomotives pulling, steep grades and stuff like that. So as I progressed and some things have changed in my life, I'm finding that this is a little too difficult for some of the things I want to do, and I made several mistakes when I put together this layout, and it is coming back to bite me in the butt. So I want to try and correct those mistakes, and so I will jump to where we left off the last time we did a kind of the initial stages of putting together a new layout, and I've basically come to my final steps now. I've done a bunch of different track plans and whatnot, and I'm going to show you kind of what I have come up with here. So let's jump into any rail, and this is where we left off. Now, I kind of wanted to keep this general design. This is real similar to the layout that I currently have. My current layout has a double main, but a tighter radius. This is the larger of the Kato radiuses. I believe this is a 19-inch outer loop. I'm currently running the 1516, and I have a loop similar to this with 12-inch radius, and then another one that kind of goes underneath it over here with a little bit of a bend. In order to get these tracks to go on top of one another on my original layout, I had to make some fairly hefty grades and steep transitions. And what this leads to is, one, locomotives derailing, especially steam engines, and certain locomotives that are lower to the ground, like GP units and whatnot, have issues making the transition between straight sections and curves where there is a change in gradient. There ends up being a little bit of a bump where they come together. Now, on this layout, I had wanted to stick with a layout similar to what I have now. I like the general idea of how my layout works as it is. I just want to get rid of some of the complexity and maintain some of the things that I like. Like the yard that I have now is really simple, it's easy to maintain, and it adds, quite a bit of storage when I need it there. So I wanted to keep things like that. So let's go ahead and jump into what I consider my final version of this. I want to go over some of the constraints that I'm working with. So all said and done, this is kind of what I'm looking at. So this piece of track out here in no man's land, let's keep that to the side for a minute. We're going to talk about some of the changes that I made to the entirety of this layout, and why I think this is going to be better for what I want to do. This is essentially a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and I have something very similar to this already in my current layout. It's slightly shorter, and it just matches an area in my house where I have room for this to be. So this can't change much. I have to stick with this general layout, you know, wood this size. So like I stated in my first video, this is 95 inches or 95 and a half inches all the way across, and when you add the backer board to each side of this, this will come out to be a perfect 96 inches. So I have a area of wall right here and an edge right here that is exactly 8 feet, so I need to be pretty on point with that. So that is why this kind of looks funny here. This is doesn't want to snap to a half inch, so currently it is just a little bit short over here, but don't worry about that. Also over here you see some track protruding past. That's all fine and good. I will actually trim these pieces of track to be flush right here, and then I will take the leftover piece and snap it down here, so everything will be nice and smooth with the wall. Also, there is going to be a 2x4 right here, so there will be some space that gets taken up by that. So the main thing I definitely wanted to change was I want the larger main track radius. I like the larger radius for the way it makes cars look, especially as I'm getting into some larger pieces of rolling stock. So I have passenger cars, the Amtrak stuff, and 89-foot flats, as well as auto racks, and they tend to just look nicer on larger radiuses. Plus, in general, larger radiuses are easier on your engines and your rolling stock. They just tend to track better in my experience. So moving to a larger radius will help with some reliability issues. However, I have areas on the layout that are going to be tighter radiuses for testing purposes. Now, as we look at the main line here, some changes have been made. I got rid of my double crossover and went to just a standard crossover. I generally haven't used my double crossover very much. There's a little bit of added expense to it, and then there are some wiring concerns as well as just reliability things. They can be a little bit finicky, especially with certain engines, so I am opting for just a standard crossover here. Sorry about that. Also, I had on each end of this turnouts, I want some straight pieces of track before any turnouts, so the engines and rolling stock have a period of time where they are tracking straight before they move into another turnout. So S-curves are notorious on things, especially when you throw a turnout in the mix. That tends to mess with things. So the main line is strictly about reliability. Everything with this main line is meant to make everything work a little bit easier. I wanted to maintain the bridge for my current layout. You can kind of see it up here in this corner. There's a bridge in the far back, right about here in my layout currently, which is honestly the absolute worst place for it. There's a lot of times that cars get derailed or whatever, and they end up getting stuck on that, and it is absolutely unreachable in my current location. So since I wanted to maintain the bridge, I am moving it right here where it's easily accessible, so if anything gets stuck in there, as well as cleaning becomes drastically more simple. As we move around, I want to maintain the tunnel, and you can see I have this set up to be in the tunnel here. It will more than likely be farther down this direction. The entrance and the exit will be farther this way, just difficult to do in any rail currently, so that's just how it's set up. Also, right here will be completely open on the side for videoing purposes, so you will be able to see inside the tunnel. So the track comes right up to the edge of the actual piece of plywood. I've been doing this for quite a while, and I don't have problems with the 15 or 16 inch radius. So moving to a larger radius, I'm not really concerned about locomotives falling off the layout. I've never had an issue with a derailment. Also, anytime I have had a derailment, because these have the super elevation, they tend to tip to the inside. So I feel pretty safe having that relatively exposed right there. This area will also be open. Currently, it is a closed off area on my layout. I can put cameras in here so I can take video from different angles. It's going to provide me with more angles for filming my daily videos as well as my review videos. As we move into the back here, I want to have this tunneled over. Now, sorry about that, had to cough again. As we move into the tunnel here, the tunnel starts right here. In reality, this is going to be pushed back to probably right about here. And the reason for that is, as locomotives, especially ones like this SD80 that are coming by, or the Big Boy, or the electric Great Northern that I have, they tend to have a lot of front end swing out. And you want to have a good distance to allow the engine, the front of the engine, to straighten back up and get more in line with the track before it moves into a tunnel, just so you don't accidentally hit something. So this is actually going to be pushed back to about here. And as we exit this, this will be at the back side of the layout. So re-railers are going to be in this tunnel. Just for reliability. I realize it's not how things work, but if something should happen back here, I would much rather it get re-railed and make it back around so I can deal with it up front. And this is just a little bit of a safety check to help with reliability. Again, here is the tunnel exit. This will probably be pushed out closer to here, all said and done. And we will have, I hope, a good working crossing here with actual functioning lights. I hope to get that worked in as we finish up this layout a little bit. And like I stated in the first video I did on this, this area is left completely open, so I can make an access panel somewhere right in here, so I can pull this out and then get into the back area should I need to do maintenance or track cleaning. As for the main line, that is really all of the stuff that I am changing on it. When we come to the yard, the only real difference between this yard and the current one is I have extended this right here. This has been moved drastically further down the layout, so I have longer expanses here to store more cars. Now, I thought about doing some connections here, so I can maybe do a little bit of switching with some short engines. It just didn't really work out, and I didn't want to have the added expense of more turnouts. So what I did end up doing is moving the granary over here. It's going to fit nicely over here. I do plan on purchasing this kit and putting it together, and so I will be able to run my grain train down in here and do loading and unloading. So we have a small branch right here as well as the yard right here. This will all be electrically disconnected. It will be on its own circuit, and we'll get to that towards the end of this. Something that I wanted to do with this is, should I move into a different area, a new house, or I get my man cave at some point, I don't want to tear down this layout. I want to integrate it into a future layout. So what I did is, this is designed to be easily attached to. This is a bridge right here. It's going to be freestanding, and it will pass through over here if it needs to. When I move should I move this into a different area. So this will be a pass through that I could hook up to a future layout should I want to do that. Also, this right here will be my programming track. It will be electrically disconnected, and it's going to be right next to my ECOS right here. So that will be handy. I might even build a re-railer in here. I'm not sure how I want to do that yet. As for the yard, pretty much standard, other than a little bit longer. Now, my secondary loops, I definitely wanted to make some changes. So this is set up at 3 inches higher than the rest of my layout, and it is actually going to be on top of the tunnel we had here. And we're going to have a small branch line that comes down here to my little logging area. Now, I received what looked to be a vintage Atlas logging mill. I plan on putting that together. My dad gave it to me for Christmas, and we're going to set it up here. And it is going to connect to this little branch line. This turnout is in the back of the layout. However, I have done measuring, and I do have access to the entire side of my layout here. So I can actually reach this with my arm should I have any derailments or anything like that. This is a 13-inch radius, and everything again will be perfectly flat. There is no radius, or excuse me, any sorry, there are no grades on this particular portion of the layout. And this bridge that I have set up here is an open top bridge, so setting cars right here to get them on the line should be easy. You don't have to try and work around the bridge. That is currently a problem I have with the secondary line I have right here. It's difficult to load cars onto it. So lesson I learned from my first layout, I am transitioning here. Another inch and a half higher, we will have this small branch line right here. Don't mind this piece of track. This is just for visuals when we get into the 3D view. These won't actually be here. What they do is I set them at a certain height so it brings the level of the ground here up so you can kind of see what I have in mind. This is all 9 and I think 3/4 inch radius. So I'm going to have some real tight bends on here, kind of the standard for all pieces of rolling stock. So I will be able to run them around right here. And something that I have learned from doing my branch line on my old layout right here is you definitely need to put space in here. Longer cars coming through here tend to cross over the center line of your curve, so you're going to need this cut back quite a ways. You're going to need some room there. So all of this right here is going to have a pretty steep kind of wall to deal with, but right here this is going to hopefully be relatively nice and smooth, and there's going to be a lot of room for cars to come through here. Now, I'm hoping that I can make this an actual working water feature right here. I'm not a real fan of doing the epoxy thing. A lot of things can get messed up on it, and you really only have one try, so I hope to waterproof this area and actually make a working little waterfall. I ended up with a excuse me, a cheap like 20 gallon a minute USB powered fish tank pump, and I'm hoping that I'll just trickle enough water through here to just kind of look nice, not splash anything up, get anything wet, cause any corrosion problems. So I'm hoping that will be kind of just a neat little water feature. The drain will be down here, reservoir will be underneath over here, and hopefully the fill will be, or the pump will output right up here. So yeah, when it comes to all of these lines, they each kind of fulfill a purpose for me. Small branch line, do a little bit of switching up here. That could be kind of fun. Lots of switching to do down here. Nothing complex. And track work should all be pretty easy to do, and this maintains kind of the similar footprint that I've been using, so that is important. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the this kind of funny piece of track that I have sitting up here. This will actually sit right here on my layout. This will be trimmed to fit perfectly, and it will be attached to, I will have a 2x4 in these three corners coming up roughly 20 inches. So I have a good backdrop for all of this for videoing, and this will sit kind of above the layout, kind of like I had storage before. However, this will be switched but connected to my main line. What it will allow me to do, because I have no grades down here, is this back section will be a perfectly straight 2.5% grade, all said and done. I will be able to stage my trains over here and do all my pulling power tests over to here, and this will have a nice block right here so they can't accidentally drive off the end, and I will be able to do all my grade testing on a perfectly smooth 2.5% grade without any oddities in the track or anything that can skew my results. So that is how I will be doing that in the future, and I will be retesting every locomotive that I can, so all of my stuff will be standardized. Um, when it comes to reliability of the electrical section of this, I am making the decision that I am making 5 zones. So I will have a mainline zone, I will have my yard, and I will have this. This will kind of be my branch line right here, my secondary up here, and then my top track. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These will all be separately switched electrically, so I could turn on and off any of these sections at will, as well as when I switch them to their secondary position, they will be wired into 2 ports. I'm guessing somewhere right over here that I could plug in a DC controller on, or a separate DCC system to do testing for newer DCC systems. I do want to test some of them eventually. So that will allow me to test DC locomotives as well as other things. So every one of these could be switched between 2 different power sources and be electrically disconnected from one another. So I could have these 2 loops running on one DCC controller and the main line running on my ECOS, and these 2 could be shut off completely. So I have those switches figured out, and what I did is we will jump over to my slicer. I started 3D designing some of my faceplates. So here I'll have my main line, I'll have my rail yard, my branch line, my upper loop, and my lower loop. And this can be, in the up position will be the auxiliary. So whether that is my DC system plugged in or a different DCC controller, you would switch any of these over to that to have control. Standard DCC will be my built-in system, and then if you put the switches in the center position, they will be electrically disconnected. So I have this all designed, and I am waiting for some more switches to show up. These are measured out, and I built it perfectly to fit the switches that I purchased. I also want all of my turnouts to be on switches as well. I looked into having them controlled inside the ECOS. It required a substantial investment in electronics to do so. I want to say 8 or 9 switches on this layout currently, and it would take 2 controllers. I was hoping to find some DigiKeys controllers to do the switching with. They're just not currently available, and the way you have to do Kato turnouts, because they're coil controlled and they're reverse polarity, it requires 2 units. So at $60 a piece, it would have been a significant investment just to have electronic control. So what I'm doing on this layout is I am wiring them into momentary switches. So I could technically change over to that in the future if I wanted to. And each one of these switches, I will have a faceplate and on a panel, kind of like what I just showed you. So I will be able to control them right over here, right next to my ECOS. So I will get into wiring and how I do all that. And if anybody's interested, I can sure go into Fusion 360 and show how I put together those panels. It's really easy to do. And then I will start 3D printing those as soon as I get this layout put together. I have purchased all the lumber that I need to get started on this, and I'm hoping this weekend I will start getting the cuts made and the framework built for this, so I can get the foam glued down and we can start doing some track work. And I hope to get most of that on video. I just don't know if I will have it edited in time to be up for the following week. I am now on a different schedule. I have to slow down my engine reviews. I burned through all of my previous stock, so I'm purchasing new units to review, and I just don't have the money to do a weekly review, so I am every other week now. So I hope to be doing these live streams on Sundays when I am not doing a review. I'm going to continue to do rolling stock reviews every week, as well as my empty wallet Wednesday. Now, I have some cool stuff this Wednesday I want to talk about. This week's review, we were talking about the Kato P42s. I have changed some of my lighting parameters on those, so I want to go through that with everybody this Wednesday. I think it'll be interesting. I've got some cool information on how I got that working properly. But when it comes to the layout, oh, sorry, I keep missing the mic soon enough here. I made a very serious mistake building my first layout, and it is not something I'm going to make again. I pieced it together with leftover lumber to try and save as much money as I could, because quite frankly, buying Kato track to put together your layout, or any track for that matter, is very expensive. The cost per foot is astronomical, and it is a significant investment to do this, and starting over is difficult to do. So I definitely want this layout to be built to last this time. I am noticing, and you can kind of see it in the upper left hand corner when my engines come around, I have to move my layout occasionally just to get to things and do some maintenance, and every time I do, I end up shifting some of my track work, and you'll see that I kind of have some bumps in my grade over there, and it is causing serious reliability issues with everything. So this next layout is going to be built rock solid, and so a couple of things that I have taken into account before I start doing this is I am, instead of using a piece of plywood as my main base, I am using MDF. And you would ask, why would you use MDF? Well, there's a reason why a lot of homes are built with MDF, and say like speaker cabinets, is it is really good for resonance frequencies. And you'll notice a lot of times on layouts, as trains go over certain sections, you kind of get a hollow door effect, and so the MDF will help deaden some of that those resonant frequencies, as well as, because there are no real wood fibers in the MDF itself, it is inherently pretty stable. Regardless of the time of year, regardless of the humidity level, it doesn't tend to twist or buckle or do any of that like normal wood does. Now, plywood is generally pretty good about that, but it definitely can have some twists and turns in it. And unfortunately, the lumber quality in my area is rather low, so a good flat piece of plywood is difficult to come by, and a piece of MDF, for the most part, is usually pretty well flat. So I picked up a piece of 5/8 MDF, and it's pretty darn flat, and it looks good. So that is going to be a good base to start with. Now, I'm not just putting a 4x8 sheet of plywood and have it on some legs. It needs some support underneath, so I am framing it out on 16-inch centers, kind of like you would a subfloor. So there will be a 2x4 superstructure underneath to maintain stability and keep the thing nice and rigid. And that is going to be what I hope is a game changer for making this thing stable year-round, regardless of any temperature shifts or me having to slightly move the slightly move the layout to do maintenance or get to some of the stuff behind it. So that is my hope, is that it is going to be substantially more well built and stable, as well as I am moving to pink construction foam instead of the cheaper white foam. And one, it's going to be easier to work with. The closed cell foam can be cut easier and has less stuff that fly off and get everywhere, so it's going to be a cleaner job working on this inside my house, as well as it just, in my experience, is just easier to work with. It's easier to carve. It's easier to get nice mountainous terrain look in it. So that will be pretty cool, and I'm excited to get started with that. I normally also do all my groundwork with real dirt. However, it is the middle of winter here, and we have nothing but mud and ice. So finding yard dirt to put together my soil structure on my layout is going to be difficult. So I think I am going to. It's going to be a little while before I get to that. I definitely want to do all of my ballast work before I do that this time. I want to switch the way I do that, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think I'm going to use grout because you can get it in basically any dirt color you want, and it's relatively easy to get to stick down. So I'll do a base layer of paint that's brown, lay that down as a base layer to give me kind of the dirt look, and then I will come in with foliage, grass, and trees at that point to give this a nice completed look. I, of course, will be doing all of this as part of a video series so everybody can see everything. And then right up here, instead of having a kind of an industry, I think what I'm going to do is make this a rock quarry. I have lots of extra ballast. I think I kind of want to make this into like a granite quarry. It's going to take up most of the space, honestly, and it's going to make it an easy way to hide my access door so I could pull it out, and I don't have to worry about breaking a bunch of buildings or anything like that. It's just going to be a rock quarry. So if anything happens to it, it's going to be easy to fix at that point. So this is going to be my rock quarry, and then I'm hoping to have a train station right here that the road comes down to. This also gives me a nice little area to park my Amtrak trains. So that is about all that I have to say about the layout for now. I hope to get started on it this weekend. And I got word from ESU about my my ECOS, and I hope to be getting it back in about a week, so that will be nice to have back. Alright, sorry about that. Had to get a drink. Losing my voice a little bit. Let's switch back to the layout here. Couple of updates on some things. Like I said, I am getting my ECOS back. They did some testing. They did find some issues. So I'm interested to get all that information back from them when they're done and share it with the channel. When I do get the unit back, I believe they're sending me a new one. We are going to be pressure testing some broadways with it, and so I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I was actually hoping maybe I could have a couple of lines on my new layout done, so I could do the wiring in and have the two separate DCC inputs, so I could run one on my main line and one on a different DCC system to see if I could get them to burn up. So going to be an interesting test, and when I get that figured out, I will be live streaming it 24/7. So as soon as it happens, it can be seen, and I can show that nothing was messed with, and I can send it off to the manufacturers so they have a good indication of what is going on. I have brought multiple locos in for testing. I sold off a bunch of my collection, and I brought in a bunch of new engines for testing, and I probably will have to resell them at the end of this, but so everyone knows, I am just about done with my RSD-15 testing, so the review for that will be incoming before too long. And then if you have seen my daily videos, you'll see that I brought in the Bachmann charger as well as a Kato charger, and I did an ESU lock sound install in that charger from Kato. Relatively easy. I could certainly go over that. I kind of wanted to make sure I could do it before we got there. I still need to figure out some of the lighting on how I want to go about doing that. And I also salvaged an Atlas speaker to put in there. It's not necessarily in there the right way, and I had to do some modifications. So I'm hoping that maybe someone out there will come up with a better speaker. I'm surprised Kato doesn't give you an option for the right speaker to put in there on the website, but I do have it functioning. Also, I have a Broadway ES44 AC that I brought in. I'm a little confused at what they were thinking with that, but I am testing it, and it has been relatively reliable so far. Or I shouldn't even say relatively, it's been perfectly reliable. I'm just a little confused with some of the choices they made on it, so I will continue testing that, and I might even do a video talking about some of the questions that I have on it before I do the review. But yeah, that one's got me a little caught off guard. I expected the Paragon 4s to be an upgrade from the Paragon 3, and I don't know that I can say that it is. I also brought in a rivet counter Gevo. After doing the operator, I wanted to get a rivet counter. I had a patron offer to send me one of his to try. I had an opportunity to get this one from Lombard, so I decided to jump on that, and I started testing it, and I want to do some comparisons between the version 4 Gevos, or I should say the Lock Sound version 4 in the Gevos versus the new Lock Sound version 5, as well as the older ones didn't have the fuel tank ported out for the speaker. And that was kind of one of my complaints about them, is that they weren't very loud, and then compare that to the new version 5. So I've started doing that testing. I ran into a couple of things, and I'm talking with scale trains right now, so we'll get to that when the time comes. But that is interesting. Also, some projects I got upcoming. I definitely was happy with the way that that GP60 turned out, so I am going to go ahead and get started in the next couple weeks on that GP20 that I had shown in that video. We're going to do just a standard Digitrax install on that, so it's going to be a little bit easier. And I'm going to go ahead and video how I actually do the, we'll call it machining, to get that a little more DCC friendly. So be on the lookout for that video. I have that planned for the future. And yeah, there are a lot of new locos that it looks like are coming out, so I am actively selling off some of my collection a little bit at a time so I can afford to get those as they come out. So fingers crossed. I am pretty excited to check out the SD40-2s from Scale Trains, so that should be interesting when they come out. I've been really looking forward to the BN versions of those. So yeah, that's kind of all I've got to say for today. I'm pretty excited to get started on my layout, so that will be that'll be pretty cool. I didn't think I'd be getting started on a new layout for some time, and I'm pretty excited that I came up with the finances to make it work out. I wish I was in the man cave, but unfortunately that just didn't happen. But I will keep my fingers crossed that this new layout is going to be a little bit nicer. So, all right, everybody, have a good week. I'd tell you to have a good rest of your weekend, but it's pretty well over now. And I will see you this Wednesday for the going over all the changes I'm making to my TCS decoders and my P42s to make them a whole bunch more prototypically accurate. So I will see you guys then. Bye now.